So using that, we're going to talk about job fit now. And I would like to use a personal example for job fit where there's a misalignment between somebody's natural tendencies and the key responsibilities of the job. And I will use my former employer. As I mentioned to you, we had profiled all of our jobs and we knew by revenue generation, so very factual, the best profiles for this particular position. Inevitably, one of the senior partners would have a fraternity brother who had a son who wanted to get into real estate. We knew what would, with a good amount of precision, we knew what a good personality profile was for that particular position. Inevitably, we would have these young candidates take the predictive index, and we would know that they were not a good fit for that particular role. But due to relationships, we would hire them, and generally within a year to 18 months, these people on their own realized they were not a good fit for that position. So there's some experienced people on this call. We've all been there, done that. I'm going to put it that way, where we just really weren't a good fit for a particular position. Or on the other hand, we were a great fit. I know I've had jobs that I just absolutely loved, and I knew that I was a good fit for that position. But to illustrate this, I'm going to use a job that's an inside sales hunter. We all know these people. They can make 100 cold calls a day and not care anything about the rejection that they get doing that, which would bother a lot of people. So in using the predictive index methodology, we're looking for somebody who's a little dominant. That would be the A on the screen. Someone who's very extroverted or quick to connect with people. Someone who has low patience, i.e. more drive and are self-motivated. And on the D vitamin, they're approaching the midpoint. We want somebody that's going to follow through. If you're an inside salesperson, you've not only got to make those 100 calls, but you have to record them in the company's CRM or database and record what you needed to do next step for follow-up and that kind of thing. With this profile and knowing this is what we need in this position, let's look at a candidate. Let's look at Heather. She has an MBA. She's a very smart person. She has been in sales before, but she does want the result. She's got the dominance that we're looking for, but she likes perfection. And her profile is more task over people, just a little bit slower to connect. So this would be Heather's profile for predictive index. You'll notice the A is to the right-hand side. She's got the dominance, but her extroversion is low. And her patience is right in the midpoint, and her need for formality or rules is to the right of the midpoint. If we plot her on that sales position, it's an immediate, your immediate response should be, this is not a good fit for this position. She's less extroverted than the position requires, and she needs perfection, which is very hard to do when you're in that kind of a position. So obviously the question would arise, can Heather do that job? Using predictive index, we know that she's probably not going to be a good fit for the job. Can she do it? Yes, she can do it. But for how long? Because at some point her needs will come through and she would probably be a very unhappy camper in a year to 18 months, as we've already talked about. The strain of being in that position where she's not a good fit would override. So this is an example of where someone's not a good fit for the job itself. Now, what about the manager? We all probably have had jobs where we just did not get along with our boss. And we know that people don't quit their job, they quit their manager. So you may have a boss that just has a different approach to work, or they communicate differently than what's comfortable for you. And I personally could tell you that as Jim pointed out in my bio, I love working with entrepreneurs. I love getting things done. I don't need a lot of manager oversight. Just give me the task and I'm going to get it done for you. So we're going to run through a couple of examples of management style. One is dominance, and some of you may know of Meg Whitman. I looked her up the other night. Her net worth right now is 4.9 billion, not million, billion. So she was formerly, she took eBay from a $5.7 million company to an $8 billion company. And then also, you might know her as the CEO of HP over the years as well. So she has more of an authoritative or telling kind of personality profile. Whereas if you contrasted her with Martin Luther King, he had obviously very quick to connect and very persuasive personality. So we would say that he was a high extrovert. How about this gentleman? We know that he was very much a perfectionist. I actually read an article about how when they first, I think, packaged one of the iPhones and it was all ready to go and ready to ship, he noticed that the color white of the box was not exactly right to his liking, and they completely canceled and repackaged all of the iPhones. And then finally, when you're an aerospace engineer and you run Boeing or you turn Ford around, sometimes adhering to rules and process and operations and formality is very important, and that would be our fourth example of a manager. Now, we've all heard of the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, but when you are a manager of people, sometimes that's not applicable. What's more important is to understand your employees and the needs that they have. So if you have an employee like me who was dominant, I need impact. I need to make sure that there's results, and I want to see it fast. If the employee is an extrovert, they need the feedback. And this is a real challenge. We were talking about this, Jim, at the beginning. Some of my friends that were in biz development were the most miserable during the whole lockdown in March and April and May. They weren't getting that human impact that they needed, that human connection that they needed working virtually from home by themselves. So that is a real need that people have if they have high extroversion. If someone has high patience, give them time. If you are managing someone with high C, you want to make an appointment with them to visit with them in their office. Or if you give them assignment, give them a week, give them some time to figure it out, and they're going to do an excellent job. But if you walk in their office or you call them on the phone, now that we're all working virtually, and ask them to make a decision quickly, that's going to be very uncomfortable for them. And if you're an employee that needs the rules, give them the details of the job. Here's exactly how this is going to play out, and not expect them to invent that for themselves. So employee needs take precedence over the golden rule when you're a manager. And I'd like to give you another example here using the PI methodology. Here we have Aaron, head of sales. He needs feedback. He's an extrovert. He's very quick to connect with people. And here's Holly, our new CEO, who's very direct. She's very data-driven, and she's operationally focused, which can be a wonderful thing, just like we saw with Meg Whitman, who can turn a company around using those techniques. But if you looked at the predictive index profile of these two people, you would see, without being a predictive index expert, that these profiles are exactly opposite of each other. You'll notice that Aaron has a very high B, very extroverted, and look at Holly's profile. Her B is to the left of the midpoint. So she is more reserved. So you have a very extroverted person with a very reserved person, and Holly's out there asking Aaron to submit his sales goals and measuring him every quarter on whether he makes the goals or not. And KPIs are very important. And we know how this will probably play out, don't we? Aaron's going to leave, and he's going to take his database with him and do a really good job for a competitor, probably. So we know that employee needs comes first if you're a manager, and it's very important to understand the behavior drives of your employees. I will tell you that predictive index, in addition to being used for pre-employment, has wonderful resources for one-on-one reports, how you can I've even used them not in marriage counseling, but helping a couple with having difficulties using the relationship reports out of predictive index. They have manager awareness reports. A lot of it is just helping the manager to understand what their drives are and how they communicate. And same thing for the employees, having them be aware. So awareness and adapting are the keys when it comes to being a better manager. And we've also talked, we know that one of the third factor we want to talk about is team dynamics. And I'm actually going to use Katie Fowler-Smith, who's on the line with us today, as an example of this, with her permission, by the way. She had a job that she was a great fit for. She liked the company. She and her boss had some issues, but they kind of worked through the issues. But she was on a team that she did not feel like she was rewarded for the amount of work that she put into that team. So she actually left a position, not because of the job fit, not because of the boss, but because of the team itself. And to illustrate this, we're going to use Daniel, who's the president of Predictive Index. This is a really driven guy. His dominance is literally off the chart. He's very reserved, and he wants to get things done in a very fast manner. If we took the management team at Predictive Index, on average, you would notice that this management team is very extroverted. You'll notice that the V is way to the right of the caret. And while they're very driven, their patience is on the lower side. They don't have a lot of need for rules and regulation. So if we plotted his profile on top of the team's profile, you would see there's a huge misalignment. And you would think, how could this ever work? Well, of course, within Predictive Index, they practice what they preach. So they use the Predictive Index internally, and they have worked this out. And like we talked about, part of this is just being aware of where you fit on the team and making concessions to include the team in Daniel's decision, and for the team to help influence Daniel as well.